Okay, so all right, hang on one second.
Is like 10 years after. So this Jew 10 years before Muhammad, he's got the Torah, he's accountable to it, but he doesn't even have the Quran as a criteria, quote unquote, to tell him what's true and what's wrong. Because this is what a lot of Muslims try and say. They go to 548. But that just isn't going to be there just a few years before Muhammad actually was a prophet and gave the Quran. So, but the Jew is still accountable to it, though. So,
Okay, so just hearing now, the Islamic dilemma is the most annoying argument, like on Islam. It is so annoying, and it is so they keep repeating the same stupid arguments over and over again, wasting everybody's time with this argument that has been refuted over and over and over again. But notice how David Wood and this guy. Notice how David Wood and this guy keep bringing up, the Islamic dilemma. I don't know what the guy on the left's name is, but they keep bringing up this stupid argument. But I want to, now going back to, okay, now going to Quran chapter 5 verse 44. Notice what it says. It says, "We have revealed the law to Moses. Therein was a guidance and light. Bystanders have been judged by the Jews." Now, notice what it says. It says, "We revealed the law or the Torah to Moses." Now, is the law of Moses the book of Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, Exodus? No, it isn't, because the Quran is saying we revealed the law or the Torah to Moses. Is that the written Old Testament that came at least 500 to 800 years after Moses? No, it isn't. And notice what the Quran says. It says we revealed the law or the Torah to Moses. That's not the Old Testament. Nowhere does the Quran say Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the book of Exodus. Nowhere does the Quran mention the Old Testament books. Nowhere does it say, we gave Moses the book of Genesis or the book of Exodus or the book of Numbers, etc. So that alone is right there is alone. That alone is good enough to refute that the Quran confirms the Old Testament, because the word Old Testament never appears in the Quran. It just says we revealed the law to Moses. That is either a written or an oral law, a written or an oral law revealed to Prophet Moses back when Moses was alive. We know that the Old Testament, that Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Exodus, the first five books of the Old Testament came at least, I don't know, 500 to 800 years after Moses died. Thus, it's impossible for the Quran to be confirming something that was written after Moses, because the Quran says we revealed the law, we revealed the Torah. Further, if we read the Quran chapter 5 verse 46, it says, in their footsteps we sent Jesus the son of Mary, confirming the law that had come before him, and we sent him the gospel. So notice what the Quran is saying. It says we revealed or we sent the gospel. That the gospel of the Quran is not the written New Testament books, the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts, Revelation, 2 Timothy, etc. The Quran is saying we revealed the gospel, but the gospel is singular. It's not plural. It's not the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So the Quran chapter 5 verse 46 and the Quran chapter 5 verse and the Quran chapter 5 verse 44 are good enough to refute this claim that the Quran confirms the Bible, because the Quran is talking about the revealed law or Torah to Moses in the revealed gospel to Jesus. That's not the written Old Testament, and that's not the written New Testament. So the Quran is talking about the revealed law to Moses, and that's not Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, and Exodus, the first five books of the Old Testament. The Quran says we gave Jesus the gospel, which is a singular written or a singular oral gospel. That's not the written gospels, plural, of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that came after Jesus. So Christian scholars will agree that Moses did not write the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Jesus did not write Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. At best, these books were written years, like many years after Moses and Jesus, and they were written by unknown authors, according to even Christian scholars themselves. Thus, the Quran is not confirming something it's not directly talking about. So this is what these Christians fail to understand, is that the Quran never uses that word Old Testament, New Testament, in the word Bible, nor are those words the Old Testament and New Testament, or the book of Genesis, Leviticus, or Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, nor are those names in those words in those books, names of those books used in the Quran. Thus, the Quran cannot be confirming something that it's not talking about. It's like me going to the New Testament and saying, yeah, the New Testament's talking about Superman, but yet there's no reference of anything. There's no reference of that DC character in the New Testament. It's that ridiculous. Or it's me going to the New Testament and saying, it's like me going to the New Testament and manipulating text and mutilating text and saying and trying to prove like the substitution theory or something like that. It wouldn't work, right? It would be like me going to the Gospel of Matthew, taking things out of context and saying, Jesus was not crucified, etc., etc., and somebody else was crucified instead of him, ripping things out of context, etc. It's that ridiculous. So these Christians need to stop manipulating or mutilating the text of the Quran to say what they want it to say. They need to read the Quran in its full. They need to understand that the Quran is not talking about what they want it to talk about. It's not talking about the Bible. It's not talking about the Old Testament. It's not talking about the New Testament. It's talking about the revealed law, the revealed gospel, which is not the written Old Testament and not the written New Testament. So if you want to refute the Islamic dilemma, it's very simple. Ask, where do the words Old Testament and New Testament, or the Bible, appear in the Quran? They will never be able to answer that question, because they know that the Quran is not talking about the New Testament and the Quran is not talking about the Old Testament. It's talking about the revealed law to Moses, the revealed gospel to Jesus. That's not the written Old Testament, and that's not the written New Testament that came years after Moses and Jesus and were written by unknown authors, according to even Christian or conservative scholars themselves. So the Quran cannot be confirming what it's not talking about. The Quran can't be confirming the Bible or the Old and New Testament when those words don't appear anywhere in the text of the Quran. So, if they want to play this game with the Quran, we can play this game with the New Testament, taking things out of context and, saying, well, Paul is a false apostle based on this and that, or Jesus was not crucified based on Jesus being Jesus Barabbas in the Gospel of Matthew, etc. So if they want to play this game with the Quran, we can play this game with the Bible all day, all night, and we can take things out of context and prove whatever we want it to prove. We can take something out of context that Jesus says and manipulate it to mean something else. Like when Jesus says, he identifies himself as a prophet, we can just say, oh, well, Jesus identified himself only as a prophet, and those other texts that talk about him being something else are all corrupted. So, if they want to play this game with the Quran, we can play this game with the New Testament. We can play this game with the Bible too. But again, this is just a waste of time, because this is a very easy point to refute. Nowhere does the Quran confirm the Bible, and nowhere does the Quran mention the Old and New Testament. Thus, the Quran cannot be confirming something it doesn't directly talk about in its text. So that alone is good enough to refute the Islamic dilemma, the most annoying argument I've ever heard.